Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today, and welcome to the Women at the Top podcast interview series, Spot On with Regina Barr. My name is Regina Barr, and I'm going to be the host of the program today. And joining me is Becky Amble. I'm so excited to have you back, Becky, because we've talked in the past. But let me tell you a little bit about Becky before we get started. She is a strategic marketing leader, author, and speaker with over 30 years of experience. She's the founder and president of Future Focus, which I love that name, and consultant with the Platinum Group. She has expertise in strategic marketing, including product marketing, market research, and revenue growth. She has authored over 150 articles, 250 plus videos, and 15 books. I'm just exhausted reading that, Becky, I gotta say. She has an MBA in marketing from Central Michigan University and has a commitment to community service through organizations like the Bloomington Rotary Foundation. So, on that note, welcome to our program today, Becky.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm really actually pretty excited to be reconnecting you with our viewers and listeners because early on, I think when you wrote one of your first books, we had you on to talk about that. And it was really a very new phenomenon for most people. And I think a lot of people weren't exactly sure how to use it. So I want to get the backstory for those that are listening in today in terms of what inspired you to write books about mastering AI.
I am just going to kill something because your
Are
voice
you with
got a
me?
little.
We're not hearing you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, yeah, go ahead. We're waiting to
Okay.
hear from you. What made you write these books on mastering AI?
Okay. You can hear me okay now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I just killed something because I had a gap in what you said. Anyway, I will get to answering your question. Well, a number of years ago, I first heard about artificial intelligence from my mastermind group out of Scotland. And I just thought, great, one more thing to learn. Can't I just do what I know? And then the following week, this gentleman that runs the group, Jonathan, he said, I have to show you guys how this works. And so I sat through the demonstration and I was so excited. I just had to set up my account that night and start working with it. And at first I thought, that wasn't quite what I wanted. So I went back and I refined my, as we call them, prompt, went back and refined my prompt. And I was just so excited. So I started getting educated myself. I've been through training in 3 different organizations, and I'm still in one program that does a 12-week program and then repeats. So we're in the 8th or 9th iteration, and I love that because things are changing so fast. I want to be able to keep up. Anyway,
Awesome.
after going through a lot of this, I said, well, what could I do? And I was feeling a little bit compelled to nudge women to get out there and do this because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And I have heard too many women say things like, oh, that's tech stuff. I don't do tech. And I'm like, get over it. It's not that hard. And you need to be taking charge of your career, your company, whatever. And it's going to be important to know what is going on in the AI world.
Yeah, and I mean, it's grown by leaps and bounds. And I can still remember the very first time that I used AI, and I had taken on a project with my local chamber
Mm.
and had very limited time that they could afford to utilize my services. And I used it to help fine tune some marketing materials and then some scripts that myself and the team that I was working with were working on. So that was my first dipping of the toe, if you will, to try it out and was like unsure, what is this thing and how is it going to work? And then we forget, right? If you think about Google, right? Google is a form of AI. And like sometimes I think once I started thinking about it that way for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're using AI all the time with Google. It's
Yeah.
just using it in a different way and now having these other tools that can be very targeted. So I think, like yourself early on, so fast forward, you're an early adopter. Now you have people coming on board, and I think they do have a lot of curiosity about AI and how it can help them not only in their professional lives, but their personal lives. But today we're really focused on the professional life, right? But when you talk with small business owners and executives, what are the very first questions that they tend to ask you about AI?
A lot of times they ask, how do I get started? Then they might ask, do I really have to do this? And then what do I need to do? Where do I go? Help me out here. Point me in a direction.
And then what do you do? How do you do that? How do you help them get started? Like how do you usually get people who may have some ambivalence or uncertainty, or like you referenced earlier regarding women who are like, "Oh, that's a tech thing, that's
Right.
that's not in my space." So, what do you tell them how to get started?
Well, there's a number of things. A lot of times I will tell them they need to get educated, or that could be a good starting point. And I can refer them to the place that I think is really phenomenal. My colleague and I have done a number of education sessions for people. So depending on the situation, if it's a company and they've got, I don't know, 5, 10 people, we can tailor a training program just for them to get everybody at least the foundation so that they can start doing things. And then in our work, typically what we do is we do an assessment. So if we talk to somebody and they say, I know I need to do something, I don't know where to start, they're just wandering, we do an assessment and we start talking to them about, what are you doing now? Where do you have repetitive tasks? What is frustrating you? What do you wish you could get rid of? Like offload those jobs that you think, somebody has to do this. And it just almost, it's not a time waster because it has to be done, but you feel like it's a waste of time or a waste maybe of your skill level or somebody else on the team. And you go, gosh, I want them to do the tougher stuff and they're getting stuck in the mundane. So a lot of times, again, we start with the assessment to find out what's going on, what are your frustrations, even finding out what tech do you have now, what tools do you have to work with.
Yeah, that's a great idea, I think, to do an assessment. When you were talking about women, I couldn't help but chuckle because I remember uh, in my small business when I first started doing events, and I did a lot of them on my own, and then I brought other people on board, and my executive assistant is probably chuckling right now, but at first I couldn't let anything go, right? Because I was so used to doing everything. And then once I let go, I remember she and another person that was working with us at the time put on this event, and they improved things and made it better. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So delegating is a good thing. And so in some ways, when I think about AI, it's also another form of delegation, right? So
Yeah.
if we can reframe how we look at the tool, I think sometimes that can be helpful in encouraging people to try that. So you talked about this assessment. So from a small business standpoint, I'm a small business, and I have to say that I'm very blessed. My executive assistant has gotten on the AI bandwagon, and she has incorporated and sort of into different business processes, and then brought me along on that. So if you were talking to a small business and you were to say, without going through a lot of training and spending a lot of time, what would be one thing that they could try out AI to help them in their
Yeah.
business?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love how you have reframed things because so much of what goes on in AI, I tell people it's really something you need to consider change management too, because it changes how we work, how we think about work, all of that kind of stuff. And for some people, change is not a comfortable thing. So, what I would tell people is get yourself educated and pick one tool that you can learn and one task. And I usually would recommend that they use ChatGPT because it's got a lot of additional integrations and tools that you can use that are kind of built into it. The other one, if they are worried about security, I would say use Claude, the French name, Claude, and pick one thing to get started with. And what I think I've rethought some of this a little bit myself, that in a small business, maybe one of the good ways to start is if you're the leader, is to try doing some things that affect how you do your job personally. So for a lot of people, if they're doing content, they get stuck. Well, you can use AI to help with that. Or if you're doing some kind of other communication, or if you're doing emails and you're kind of stuck. I think sometimes it's helpful if one person starts dabbling and learning, and then you get some success, and then you
Mhm.
can bring in the other people or teach them. So I really think it's start with one tool and one
Yeah.
thing that you can work on.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the communication aspect because I think that is one thing that as leaders, it's the most critical part of their job, or even small business owners, especially if you're super small, like a solopreneur. Communication is everything. So I like the idea of using the tool to help improve the communications. And I'll tell you, the very first time I did it, I wrote something, and then I mentioned that. It was for some marketing materials. And I literally just said, see if you can shorten this, see if you can make it more pithy, see if
Right.
you could make it a little more casual, like so it wasn't so formal. And it was just amazing. And then I didn't do it for a while. Like I was just like, oh yeah, okay, that was like a one-off thing. And then I did it again. And I'll give a recent example of something I just did. In my personal life, I was invited to an 80th birthday party,
Mm.
and they had these beautiful invitations that they used, but on the back it was completely empty. And I decided to make something for my friend who was turning 80. She's a neighbor, and I wrote something out, and I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. And I put it into chat GPT, and I said, rhyme this. And it
Oh,
did. And then I was like, okay, so this is where sometimes, I've had some concerns. So I'll share this because maybe others have had some concerns, is about copyright and things like, where are they pulling this? Is this truly my words if it's been manipulated by chat GTP? So then I asked ChatGPT, I said, is this copyrighted? And they were like, no, pretty much in whatever words they said, that these are your words, we've just fine-tuned them or whatever. So then I was like, happily put it on my little card stock, had it printed at FedEx, put it in a frame, and voila, had a beautiful gift. So I'm chuckling because I still think that there are some people who think it's just hype, right?
right.
AI, it's just hype. It's not going to help me. So how do you show business owners, whether it's small business owners or executives, or I don't care if you're the CEO of your home, how does it help you save time, save money, or make your money work harder? All those things that are important, that ROI of investing time in that tool. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. And I want to compliment you on that, because a great starting point also for somebody that's not sure where to go or what to think about it is to do some things that they can use in their personal life. And all of a sudden you go, well, that saved me some time. Or you've got a
Yes.
volunteer thing, and was running a foundation, and part of the group said, well, we need to send letters out. And I'm like, well, we never did that before because the president of the club always made phone calls. Anyway, I thought, doggone it. So I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, here's what I want to do, and here's how I want it to sound, and et cetera, et cetera. Got a letter, and then I said, give me 5 more variations. So, I think it's just a matter of stepping across that threshold and saying, I'm going to at least play with it. If I just do it for myself till I get comfortable, hey, that's okay. Well, and what is really frustrating, and that's where I've started to say, maybe people need to think about how it can work in their job specifically versus taking on the organization. We work with both situations because there is research that has come out. In fact, the research, I don't remember who did it, if it was McKinsey or Statistica or Gartner, one of those probably. But they have come out and said 95% of businesses are getting no ROI from,
Really?
yes, from using AI. And part of me says, what the heck are they doing? Because
Is
when we,
well, the first thing that went in my head is I call BS, but okay.
yeah,
Um,
well, and that's where I think a lot of organizations have just jumped in, and they might not be trained, they might not be educated, they might not really know where to spend their time. And that's where I think, whether when I'm out speaking, I always say, hey, here's our process. Here's how we do an assessment. If you want to do it DIY, at least follow a process. And that's where I think people are running into some problems, is that if you don't really look at what are your business objectives and how can AI help you get there or do things better, faster, cheaper, you're missing the boat. And then it does look like hype because people aren't using it effectively.
Well, I agree with you there. And I think the way that I have looked at it, so if you look at the simple example of helping me craft that thing,
Right.
that card or creation I was making to put in a frame, it's about saving, it's sort of like the low investment, low hanging fruit where I can save some time so that I can invest time in higher value items. So if you're not
Good.
leveraging that investment by eliminating some of the lower value items, so you can leverage that into doing higher value items, I could see where they might be finding some of those statistics and agree with you about going through the proper analysis, like you said, an assessment to figure out where are the best places to insert the
Yeah.
AI, not doing it willy-nilly. It's just really being targeted in how they do that. So
Yep.
I want to shift the conversation to something that you had mentioned a little earlier, because I just said I was a little concerned about copyright, right? Like where are they pulling all this stuff? And you had mentioned using Claude if security was a concern or issue. So I do know that there are a lot of companies that have concerns about data security. And like, for example, my husband works for a medical company where they have a lot of
Mhm.
proprietary designs and data, and they're concerned about what's referred to as AI hallucinations. And for our listening or viewing audience, AI hallucinations are when an AI model generates false, misleading, or nonsensical information and puts it out there as if it were fact. So, how do you help businesses or job hunters or homemakers or whomever decide what's safe to use AI for?
Well, that's a great question, too. And what I tell people is learn everything you can because you're going to be better at detecting hallucinations or fake stuff the more you know and the more you're kind of proficient with using AI. And it's an issue all the time. And some of it is that people don't understand how AI works because it's basically trained on all the information that their inventors, creators that started the company could put together, and they would go scrape the internet, they'll do whatever, read every book digitally, of course,
Right.
and put together this information. Well, what happens is I always say I wish my kids were built this way. AI is built to solve your problem, to do what you tell it. So if you say go get me this information, it just hustles right up there and goes and finds everything, and it works differently than a database. So it's going to collect information that kind of falls into that bucket. So you don't know for sure if, well, we don't know how it has been trained precisely. And there's a lot of information out. I think all of us would agree that there's a lot of stuff that is in the public domain that is an opinion. And that might not be our opinion, or it might not have been true originally. And so what we really need to do is fact check, fact check, fact check. And I usually tell people use it for something you already know, because then you're going to be able to be your own fact checker. And now a lot of them, depending on what you're doing, if you tell it go research this topic, a lot of times now they're giving you the sources. So if you see a source, you can quickly go find out, oh, let me check, is this source really where it came from? The other thing you can use is you can use Grammarly, which is really good as a plagiarism checker, if that happens to be something where you're writing and you want to make sure you're not infringing on somebody else's content. So I would say just fact check everything. And the other thing that has happened a lot of times is that we overwhelm the AI. For example, if I said, hey, I want to do a webinar on how to get started using AI for small businesses, give me 10 points. Then it gives me 10 points. And then I look at that, and you can ask for clarification and more information. I look at that and I go, wow, I don't understand even what it's saying here. If you say, give me more information on all of this, that's where it gets overloaded. So what you need to do if you've got something where you've got 10 points or you've got something that's longer is break it into chunks and give it, like if you had 10 points, you might just take point one and say, expand on this, explain this. And then you might take point two. So we just need to understand a little bit about how AI works as well. And if we overwhelm it, then it's still hell bent on that mission to answer our question, and it'll just give you whatever it comes up with.
Well, I'm kind of chuckling because I think one time when I did a search, I did it very granular, right? It was getting very discreet. And I think it, processed it and it came back and said, thanks for like getting very specific or something like that. And I just had to chuckle because I'm like, oh, it's like complimenting me on, my search criteria. I'm like, oh, I'm a rock star, and I just had to chuckle because I didn't really expect that, right? That it's um, acknowledging that. And then also sometimes I feel like it sounds odd to say it, but the more you use I think it's the more it learns. Over time. I don't know the proper words, but it does kind of learn and gets better and better when you're using it. It's almost like it learns a little bit about you, what your interests are, what your habits are, um, and we'll get better at presenting something like, I think a lot of times when I would Google things for a contract, like I would put some wording in and say, usually I'm always saying shorten it for some reason.
Okay.
And, it'll come back and shorten it. And then I'll be like, sometimes it's a little too much legalese for me, and
Sure.
this is focused on real estate. I'll say, make it a little more informal or make it a little more user friendly, and then it will, so that it's written in English, as I would say, not the legal language. So, but I want to kind of shift the conversation a little
Sure.
bit. We're talking with professionals in the corporate realm, business owners, that sort of thing. And I think as leaders in these organizations, at some point, we're all going to be on the side of working with job hunters. Or if you are a job hunter in the current job economy, what are some of the questions that a job hunter has when it comes to using AI in their search? Like, have you worked with anyone that's using it as a tool for
Yes.
that purpose?
Well, I often do get referred a number of people that are in the search. So I tell them whatever I can tell them, depending on what they're trying to figure out. And of course, the last book is the one written for job hunters. So one of the things that they will do, and I think this is a typical problem, is they get stuck getting their resume even done. And I say, I could write anybody else's resume. I get to mine and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. My brain doesn't work right. And so I think that's just a natural thing, even to acknowledge that and say, hey, I'm kind of stuck. And it's great to have a resume drafted or whatever. And then you can go to AI and you can say, optimize this for me. And I've been going to ask ChatGPT, when I tell you to optimize a resume, exactly what are you doing? Because I'm not exactly sure how it defines that. And that's, again, where we can run into trouble where we will tell it do something. And then we're like, what are they doing? Anyway, so there's things like that. You can hunt up some resumes, or not resumes, job descriptions for something that, let's say, a product marketing manager. So you can go find some generic job descriptions, maybe find some job openings, whatever, get those job descriptions. Maybe you have 3, 4, you can add those. You can upload everything to ChatGPT, well, to all of them now, but to ChatGPT in particular, and you can have it do a comparative analysis where it'll go look at those and tell you what's different in each one. The other thing would be if you said, hey, take this and then make sure my resume fits this structure because I'm not exactly sure where I'm off the mark. So that's one thing, is really tweaking the resume and getting the
Awesome.
wording right. One thing I've told people too is I always do this, or I have often done this in the past, where I will say, okay, what are the hot buzzwords in business? What are the hot buzzwords in supply chain? What are people talking about? So that we make sure we are using the language that people are using. You might even say, hey, what are the words that are high SEO for this kind of job? And then the other thing that a lot of them are, what can AI help me do to get through the ATS system? So it can help with that. So there's really so many possibilities. Oh, another great one is if you did this job search and you got a bunch of job descriptions one way or another, and then you could say, where are my skill gaps? What do I need to beef up if I need to do some additional training? And this is a particularly helpful one if you have people that are making a career shift or an industry shift. And I work a lot with military veterans, and they're struggling with, okay, we got all the military talk, and I was like the top dog here, but now getting a job is a whole different ballgame. How do I talk corporate from my particular military background? So it can be really helpful for things like that too.
That's wonderful. I mean, especially if you think about how stressful a job hunt could be. But I can also see the application on the other side of it. If you are a manager trying to put together a job description to target a certain type of position, or, HR trying to see kind of what's out there, and um, different criteria or different information, or maybe salary, or all kinds of things, I could see the application being both ways, depending on which side of the table you're sitting on. Are you the job seeker or the person searching for that seeker? So,
Yeah,
um, want to shift a little bit to fears that people have about
sure.
AI. And I think that's been, we see these stories in the news that AI is going to take over, people are going to lose their jobs. So when you think about the fears that people have of AI taking over, what role does the human touch still play when using AI?
Well, thankfully, the human touch is still absolutely essential because innovation and creativity comes from humans. Now, you can use AI really effectively to brainstorm and help you with ideas and all that kind of stuff. Just remember that we are in charge. I keep telling people, use your brain. You are in charge. Tell the AI what you want it to do for you. You are in charge. And there are some tasks that have to be done by humans. And so it's helpful when we're doing automation and things like that. You can't just have AI solve all your problems because it won't. And I'm glad. And what we say is that people on the lower end, a lot of that is being automated, and we're using AI for that, or just some automation processes. And what we see is that the best jobs are going to people that know AI or have some experience, at least have done something, and can then be a more valued employee.
Yes. So it's interesting when you talked about AI. My husband went to urgent care, and he has some challenges with wasp stings and bee stings, and now has to carry an EpiPen. But when he went in, he said that he had been stung, and I think it was a PA said, "I'm also going to help diagnose using chat or using
Uh,
AI." I don't think she said a specific um, tool that she was using. She just said that she was going to use AI to help her with her diagnosis. So it's really creeping in all sectors, in all areas. So more to come on that. But we are winding down on time. So I want to wind down our time together, Becky, with asking you for one piece of advice that you could give our listeners or viewers today, particularly professional women, about how what they can do to use AI over the course of the next year. So if you had one piece of advice, what would that be?
well, it's kind of two pieces: get educated and get started.
Awesome. I
And one
love
of
it.
the
Short and
things
sweet.
is use your phone. This week, unfortunately, I've been a little crazy with my sleep. And so I take my phone, have ChatGPT set up on it, 4 in the morning, and I go, hey, can you tell me about this? Can you research that and put that together for me? If I'm not sleeping, I can at least have my helper do some work.
Yes, to get it out of your brain too, right? So that's a
Yeah.
great. So I heard get educated and get started. So on that note, that is all that we have time for today, Becky, but it truly has been a pleasure having you back. It's such an interesting topic. So I want to thank you for joining us. And I also want to thank everyone who was listening in or watching today. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time.